It's time for Broadway Names with Julie James. Broadway Names with Julie James. Where Patty and Mandy and Phoebe and Sheeta talk Roxy and Velma and Shay and Evita. Witches and newsies and Mormons and spiders. Start out as strangers and end up confiders. That's Broadway Names.
Hi, I'm Patty LuPone. Broadway Names with Julie James.
Julie James.
Hey, I'm Raul Esparza.
It's Hugh Jackman. Oh my gosh, Julie, I'm telling you everything.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's Broadway Names with Julie James in the studio at Siriux XM on Broadway, and I am delighted to be welcoming to Broadway in his debut. Any minute now, it's Tom Hiddleston. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, it is. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing like a Broadway debut, even for a veteran actor like yourself.
Yeah,
I'm imagining.
No,
tell us.
It feels like a dream. Yeah, I've always. You can't help but just cast your mind back to being a child and dreaming of being an actor, and people talk about Broadway and the tradition here and the community and the standard and the quality of the work, and it has not come into my life before this moment, so it's very, very exciting.
Well, I'm excited for people who might be listening right now who are big Marvel fans, big Avengers fans, to learn. They may not know that you are actually a long-time stage actor. And
yes, that's where I started. Ultimately, I trained as a stage actor. I spent the first 4 or 5 years of my career in the theatre. The film staff has been amazing and one of the great surprises of my life, and I've loved it. But I never expected it. Strangely enough, I think some of my theatrical experiences have really carried me through those film experiences.
I bet.
So yeah, theatre's in my bones. It's in my blood. I think it was the thing that really turned me on to acting in the first place. And I believe in it. I just believe in the theatre. I think it's a extraordinary, powerful form.
And do you remember when it kind of came and called to you, the siren call of the theater? Was there a crystalline moment that happened?
There are a couple of years in my teens. I don't know if I could crystallize it with one experience, but I was in a school play production when I was about 13 of Guys and Dolls, and I don't think I've ever had more fun. Before or since.
What role?
Oh, I was in the ensemble.
Okay, you were in the ensemble.
It was the 18-year-olds are playing the men.
Okay.
I was a baby.
Practically.
I was a baby boy, and I was just happily dancing in Havana.
Yeah.
And doing the crapshoot dance and all that. But I went to the National Theatre in London a lot at that time, and I saw a lot of different things. I saw some, more traditional family shows, I suppose, but I saw some quite grown-up things. And I remember one particular production directed by Richard Eyre of John Gabriel Borkman, the Ibsen play with Paul Scofield, who was one of the last great stage actors of that generation, the Olivier Gielgud Richardson generation. And Vanessa Redgrave playing his wife, and Eileen Atkins playing the sister. And I never forget the experience of walking into the auditorium, not really understanding as a 14-year-old boy the rituals of people saying hello and the kind of the collisions of perfume that sometimes happen in a theatrical foyer. Because when you're a child, you're really aware of that.
Right.
And the rituals of people having a drink or whatever. But then after 2 hours or 3 hours of the lights being out and being in the same room, 800 people or 1,200 people being in floods of tears in recognition of the same experience, and that I really clocked that this was a powerful way of bringing people together. That actually, in an audience, people arrive as individuals and they leave as a group with a shared understanding of something new or something they've always known, and I still believe in that.
Woo, that is powerful. First of all, it's powerful today, but it's powerful to think that you sort of garnered or gleaned that lesson as a teenager, that you were able to sort of, pull that together.
Well, I was thinking teenagers think a lot, don't they? I certainly did. But I could see then, and I still see now, that the theatre's a place where society examines itself, celebrates itself. It doesn't have to be heavy. It can be light. It can be extremely upbeat and moving. And but it's a place where we kind of reflect each other.
So true.
To ourselves, so where we investigate things.
Yeah. It's something that changes even in my many years of theater going. It changes, right? I learn different things about it. And these days I've been thinking about it a lot as a meditation. That there's, I think especially in this age of technology. Yes, exactly. It's a chance to put your devices away, and yes, please do, but put them away and just be. And how often these days do we have an opportunity to sit for maybe 2 hours and just be with what's in front of us and experience that fully and completely without the being pulled in 20 ways and all the distractions.
We live with so many distractions, so many demands on our attention. And I think the privilege of being in the theatre is that actually all of us in the audience are focusing on one single thing.
Right.
And hopefully it is a reflection on the experience of being alive.
Yeah.
That actually allows you to investigate something more deeply and more profoundly, and that you recognize the shape of being alive on the stage, which you can relate to.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, it's such great, passionate theater talk with Tom Hiddleston. This is, Tom, you may not know, at its heart, a show tunes station. And then we break out for, from time to time for these kinds of conversations. So just to get a little show tune variety in there.
Sure.
I'm going to tip my hat to your Guys and Dolls, to what may have captured your initial germ and for the love of the theater. Think when you hear this song, think of Tom in the background as a 13-year-old. And we'll be back to talk about your Pinter play.
Great.
Music inspired by one of the first theatrical experiences for Tom Hiddleston. And he is about to make his Broadway debut in Betrayal, one of the most important Harold Pinter plays. And I was so fascinated when I heard that this was coming to Broadway, but maybe even more so because it was part of, it was called Pinter at the Pinter?
Pinter at the Pinter, yes. I'll explain a bit about that. Formerly the Comedy Theatre in the West End in London has been called the Pinter Theatre for I think the last 10 years, either just under or just over. And Jamie Lloyd, our director, and his production company last summer decided to stage some of his lesser known plays, and so it was called the Pinter at the Pinter season. So lots of short plays, radio plays, lesser known works, or one act plays which he wrote when he was younger, kind of all staged with a great cast. We had a sort of amazing run of people in it: David Suchet, Lee Evans, Tamsin Gregg, Martin Freeman, Celia Imrie, people who'd worked with Pinter or knew him, coming back to celebrate his work. And I was lucky enough to be asked by Jamie to finish the season with Betrayal. I suppose a longer, considered one of his masterpieces. But it was an extraordinary run of about 10 or 11 months of exclusively Harold Pinter work at the Pinter Theatre, and a great celebration of his legacy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's great that we can take sort of the, maybe a bit of the centerpiece of that and bring it over here for Broadway audiences to get their chance to experience it. It's an interesting play. What can you tell audiences here listening about what they can expect from this particular production?
Briefly, because I don't know how people probably know it, but it's a three-hander. Robert, Emma, and Jerry. Robert and Emma are married, husband and wife. Robert and Jerry are old best friends. Jerry was best man at Robert and Emma's wedding, and Emma and Jerry have been having an affair. Complex. It's called Betrayal.
Right. It's going to live up to its name.
Yeah. And it is about these three complex relationships: the marriage, the friendship, and the affair, the romance. And that actually those three relationships are almost dependent on each other. And that when one of those relationships breaks down, so does the other two. And I think Jamie Lloyd had it's not spoiling anything because it's the first thing you see when the curtain goes up, is I think we're the first company ever to stage it this way, is that all three actors are on stage for the duration of the piece.
Oh, wow.
And there are a lot of scenes between two people, but having the presence of the third character physically in the space shows you that actually that character is in the mind of both people all the time, that in an affair or in a betrayal of any kind, you carry those that third object in your mind, that third person, that you're not truly free. And Pinter is so clever in the way he constructs it, because it's not simply the betrayal of the husband by the wife. It's the betrayal of friend by friend. It's a play about knowledge and truth and trust. And if you know the truth, you may hold more power, especially if you withhold the truth. And so he plays with these power dynamics very carefully, because these are three people who ultimately, at one time, loved each other very much, and they're now hurting. And I think it's also classically Pinter in that he's dealing with quite profound experiences, but it's very witty and very funny.
Yeah.
And Pinter always writes about the experience of human pain with a wit and a kind of sophistication that is actually makes you laugh. I suppose if you don't laugh, you'll do the other thing.
Yeah, how true.
But I find it a endlessly fascinating play. We played it for 13 weeks in London. I still feel like there's more to discover, because he's dealing with something very profound. These high stakes things. We, as human beings, we want to connect with each other, but sometimes we do things that drive us apart. And I think that's what this play is about.
It must be a really juicy experience as an actor to be able to have spent those 13 weeks and mining into what's there, because it is so rich and so stacked in the Pinterness of it. And then to get another chance, which I assume you didn't know at the time that those 13 weeks concluded in the...
No, I thought that was it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so now you're going to get a similar amount of time here in New York to explore even. So does it continue on? Oh yes, and that's, as I suppose that's the thing that I know will continue is Zoe Ashton and Charlie Cox, who play Emma and Jerry, also in their Broadway debuts. Are extraordinary actors individually in their own right, but the three of us we just feel very connected and responsible for the delivery of this piece, and because we're all on stage at the same time, there's an intake of breath between the three of us before we go on to say, we deliver this together, and the charge between the three characters is never broken. And I find that because the audience is different every night, sometimes they want to laugh more quickly, or sometimes they just want to listen more quietly. That never gets old. That for us is feeling that live experience, feeling how people are connecting in a different way. Totally. I'm so intrigued by this notion of the three of you being on stage together the whole time. Is there a connection point that you make, like every night before the show, like before the show begins, behind the curtain? Is there a pre-show ritual of any kind to kind of... Yes, we're all there. I don't know. We do have a moment of just being together and connecting into it, and it's an extraordinary 90 minutes of this material is quite intense. But I think that's part of that's part of the play's power. Yeah, it's a very rigorous, intense look at these moments when the most intimate relationships of our lives break apart, and how that can be shattering and have repercussions further down the line. And we know that it's our responsibility to deliver that. Yeah. Wow. This is a lot to think about. I'm going to give us yet another show tune opportunity. I'm enjoying this little grab bag that I'm creating. This one is going to be from Stephen Sondheim's company, because Pinter is so signature that he's even referenced in the lyrics of this song, A Pinter Play. Music inspired by Pinter on Broadway Names with Julie James with Tom Hiddleston, who's about to do his own matinee, A Pinter Play.
Certainly am.
You'll be doing more than matinees, though, won't you?
We will.
I don't think that it is a spoiler either. It's well documented, and of course there have been many productions of Betrayal, that it is told in the reverse.
Yes.
And I thought it would be fun to ask you about, when you're doing screen work. This is one of the compare-contrast things that fascinates me about theater actors. And then, the medium of film or television where we're not telling a story chronologically.
Yeah.
And what that does to an actor and what tools in their kit they're using for doing that, for not telling a story in its chronology. Then in theater, we're used to an evening where we hear, the actor and the audience are both getting a story in its completion from beginning, middle, and end. But then here's a different twist for Betrayal, which is that you are telling a story in order, but there's a twist. There's the reverse. So what does that do for you as an actor? Is it an interesting device to tell a story?
It's fascinating. Because you can lead the audience through it, and then you find that they get ahead of you, or they get ahead of the character. And Pinter is so generous because he lets the audience in on the knowledge before some of the characters are. And so actually he lays it all out in the first two scenes. He says, so this is what's happened, and this is what you're going to now watch people discover live. And so I think the audience start to look forward to, so in my case, I play Robert, the husband, the publisher, and it's revealed very early on in the play that he's known about this affair for 4 years. And the audience then start to understand, now we're going to get to live this in reverse, and we're going to see that moment and how he's lived with this knowledge, and how this knowledge has affected his relationships with Emma and Jerry, and how he's used that knowledge as a tool somehow to... He's withheld. It's his only way of holding on to power as somebody who's been betrayed ultimately. And so the construction of it, I think, is really interesting because it allows... It's rather like a Russian doll. You sort of it's going to get smaller, but you're interested in what it looks like when you open it.
That's a very good analogy. Yeah. Very well done. You pulled that out. Use that again. That's a good one.
Okay. And how long does it go on for? Like when do you get to the smallest doll?
Right.
How long is this going to go on?
Yeah.
And people I don't know how people have seen it before or have never seen it before. I think. It's still extremely profound, extremely accessible, relatable.
Yeah, this is exciting. This is very exciting. What other than the play are you excited to be in New York for a little bit of an extended period of time? I assume you don't often get to just sit in New York City for 13 or 14 weeks.
No, I've never lived in New York for longer than 2 or 3 weeks at any one time. I'm so excited. I really am. I love this city. It's I won't be the first or the last to say it. It has the most unique energy of any city in the world. And I'm looking forward to the seasons, the changing of the seasons from summer into fall into winter, and settling in, you know?
Yeah. I think for me that would appear to be, especially for a play like this one, to again get a chance to really sink into that and be with it for the amount of time. It's not like a quick very short run.
No, it's I think we're 17 weeks.
Yeah,
which is a good long. It's limited. It's not
It's not forever.
It's not 30 weeks.
Right. Or 30 years, like Phantom of the Opera or something.
I don't know if I could do it for 30 years.
And hopefully you get a chance to see some other theater while which is tough to do when you're on your own performance schedule, but there are ways of finagling.
Maybe other shows do different matinee days or something, but I know the community of Broadway is world renowned, and just to be to have been invited into that community feels like a huge honor.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited.
I know that the community community is thrilled to be having you, and it's going to be an exciting time. And it's sneaking up on us. Previews begin August 14th.
That's right.
And so you really will have sort of a summer of fall and beginning of winter on Broadway. So that's exciting.
Yeah, it is.
It's very exciting. Well, we're thrilled for you, and everyone go see Betrayal and celebrate the Broadway debut of Tom Hiddleston.
Thank you
Congratulations.
so much. Thank you. Gosh, I'm very excited now, if I wasn't before.